You've said in the past that each new work begins with a question. What was the question that you confronted when you began to think about making a piece called Story?
I think a basic way to think about it was Bill T. Jones, the performer, was saying, what about me? I had retired from dancing 5 years ago. I say I only dance when I'm happy, which means I dance in my living room, I dance for friends or when I feel it. But then I had this desire that I wanted to get back on stage and do something that I felt my knees and my ankles and my back would allow me to do, and not have to go through the ritual every day of being in a dance company. So storytelling, very important to me. Storytelling, singing, and what have you. And I thought that that's what I would do. I would make a program of just telling stories. And of course, I've been a fan of John Cage's reading for a long, long time, and listening to it and hearing him tell.
Particularly his work, Indeterminacy.
Well, and Indeterminacy was one thing, of course, a whole series of things, Morris Graves and What You Say, and all of these things are all wonderful. Storytime was a little bit more, Indeterminacy was a little bit more esoteric, but when I looked at it, I thought, well, maybe that's exactly what you need. If you're going to do something which is spontaneous and tell stories, maybe it needs a strong form. And then once I start thinking about form, then I'm thinking about whose form. And then I think, oh, Cage has given me a maximum freedom, but a very, very difficult problem, which is they have to be exactly 1 minute long. And then it becomes this whole question of what do I want to report? And using him now as my unofficial mentor. So I oftentimes in the middle of a rehearsal will say, what would John Cage think about this? Now, my companion and creative director, Bjorn Ameland, or my associate director, Janet Wong, would say, look, Bill, you're not John Cage. What about the strictures placed on it, this 1 minute? Yes, we're keeping that. What about something being unbroken story, one after another, in the way that he did it? Well, we're making a type of theater, and I'm not making a Cunningham work. What about my own sense of showmanship, my own sense of what is rewarding and emotional for an audience? What about audience, as opposed to John Cage, who I've been surprised in learning, in reading Silence and listening to him, that John Cage was more concerned with the act of composition than he was in performance. And he said they had nothing to do with each other. And I have not seen him yet, I have not understood yet what was his relationship to audience. This is a question right now. Now as executive artistic director of New York Live Arts, now being an artist who is in his rapidly approaching his 40th year as a performer, as a maker, there's this question that never goes away. Why do I do what I do? Who am I doing it for? And what about the audience? So those questions, meeting John Cage's mid-20th century sense of, I think it's a kind of an alienation, actually. An alienation that says that I am not going to pander to what you like. I'm going to do something which is driven by an intellectual set of questions. And that's when, and we're off. Now, I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's hair-raising. It's scary, watching something, as he says, get your taste out of the way. Get your taste out of the way. Did he really do that? I'm not sure. He says a lot of things that I wanted to practice. Or a favorite of theirs, and I don't know who we attribute this to, is get rid of the glue. No to transitions. No to making things, quote, develop in a way,
No to a narrative arc.
No to a narrative, but there's also, formal arcs as well. Theme, variation, transition. No to all of that. Just what a thing is. This next to this next to this. That's rough going. There's something that Cage is getting at that I think is really amazing about the chaos of existence, the space-time continuum. Artists recognize it, and there's unity. However, it behooves the artist to have an intellectually imposed structure on such chaos. And that's what I'm exploring right now in Storytime.
And part of the device that Cage used, and as did Cunningham, was chance operations. And I know when we last spoke, you were thinking about structuring the stories using chance devices. And is that still, or that really gives up control entirely to, lack of a better term, fate?
Yeah, it's good point. And on the way over here today, as I'm thinking about talking to you, I'm also thinking about the rehearsal this afternoon. And should I start with a framing story? And should I have this very emotional, personal story here to help the audience's heart settle? And should I then, to be provocative, put this story about watching the I think they're called Superflex film of the flooded McDonald's here at the Walker.
Right.
Should that story, which I've never done yet, fit into our showing on Wednesday to make it topical and relevant to the Walker?
All of which would upend a pure chance.
Yes, but they would be serving some other agenda.
Sure, right.
Now, if I would just say, Mr. Cage, please leave the room. Thank you very much. And be free of that, I wouldn't have to have the sense of guilt that I'm somehow less courageous than he was. But Mr. Cage aside, Bill, what do you want?
Right.
Do you want the piece to, do you want some control over the emotional movement of the piece?
Right.
I've come with more questions because every day I feel differently about it.
Right.
No, we're not just spinning the wheel randomly anymore. But there are places that still are indeterminate in it.
Do you, I thought also perhaps that the structure and the looking back at Cage, that perhaps with the passing of both Cage and Cunningham, did it give you a sense of freedom to look at those devices, or did you see it as in part an homage to those figures who are no longer with us?
Yes, of course, it's an homage. I love them both for what they represent. And I know them as men somewhat, but I don't really know them as men. They are ideas, and they are ideas that I cherish. They are badass artist types who really were able to do something that maybe I'm not able to do. They could thumb their nose at the world and expectations of the world. At least they did at a certain point. And they did something that was strong and all. If you're asking me what this is, what it feels like with them right now, yeah, I try to, that's what it feels like. A strange kind of father-son relationship or something like that, trying to understand what did you leave me. And I spend much more time thinking of Mr. Cage than Mr. Cunningham.
So you're actually taking components from your history as a choreographer, different gestural elements and movement sequences, and actually creating a menu of which you can mix and match.
Exactly, and because that's arduous. Because there are people who come in who, what do you mean, Blauvelt Mountain? The way Arnie and I were moving together. Now this person, I came in because you liked my legs. I came in because
this is a dancer speaking.
Yeah, they don't really say it.
Right.
Yeah, and you want me to I have to master all of these styles over 30 years so that you can take out 30 seconds and do this with the material. So the pedagogy is tremendous. I want people to understand what I'm tasting, why I think that story time is a tasty, important exercise about mind and heart and memory and hope. Eyes. I got to show it. I need partners to do that.